Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is November 19, 2023. Excuse me. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Also, want to thank the New York Finnegan's Wake Group for introducing me to Brendan McCarthy, our guest today. Where are you calling in from, Brendan?
Downtown Brooklyn.
How cool is that? The first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
Oof. Multiple parts to this to answer it the way I think it should be answered. The very first thing is self-actualization, by which I mean that a person develops and uses all of their talents to the greatest extent that they can. I think you can't actually be a happy human being without really doing that.
Yeah.
I would add to that having a layer of compassion is absolutely critical to being a happy human, and nothing special about it. Just the golden rule. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
And I would say the third part would be comprehension, by which I mean not just emotional understanding, but the ability to process the information that our environment just throws at us all the time. That's really critical to process it and understand what your environment really is.
Oh, boy, I think we could just end there. You answered every question I'm going to ask. you did the DNA. Whoop.
Well, no, we can talk about Frank Zappa.
Well, we'll get it. No, but it was funny because I interviewed Frederick Wiseman, the great documentarian, once, and he doesn't want to talk. He wants his art to talk for him. And it was like, dude, you just answered everything I would ask you in 90 minutes. So thank you. The problem is I think someone has it taped on their cell phone, so it's sort of lost in the ether. But that was really good. You covered a lot, and I appreciate that, Brendan. I appreciate you being concise and articulate and kind of easy to understand. It wasn't highbrow. It was so grounded. I really got it. So you anticipate this. What is your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
Oh, for me, it's absolutely writing. I don't do well with language. I'm surprised that I'm being a little more articulate today a lot more articulate than I normally am. I'm much better writing things down. I'm much better reading things.
Yeah.
And thinking about it, often being recursive with both.
Okay, but did you become a reader because, one, your parents told you, two, they did as an example, or three, on your own?
Really on my own. My parents were immigrants. They did not have educations. My father did read all the New York newspapers, starting with the Times daily, but that was it. No one read books. I was just perversely curious. They had purchased, I was the youngest of a bunch, and they had purchased a 20-volume Collier's Encyclopedia. And by the time I was 5, I had read through H. Now, I didn't understand a lot of what I was reading. I would ask my older siblings to explain things to me, and a lot of times it went right by me. But no, I was just perversely curious about everything.
Really good. I'm going to ask you a question. When you said all the New York newspapers, would it be the New York Times? Was the Post one of them?
I'm sure he read the Post, the Daily News, the Journal American was still.
Wait, Daily News, and then what's the fourth one?
Post, the Journal American was still in business.
Journal American, okay.
Yeah.
Before so New York Times, Post, Daily News, and Journal American. There's 4.
Yeah, well, and he read more than before the big New York paper strike in the late 60s. We had 11 daily newspapers.
Oh my God, you had 11 dailies. I didn't know that.
After the strike, we had 3.
That's 19 what?
Oh, late 60s.
Late 60s.
Late 60s.
Wow.
So he read at least 4 or more daily.
Wow. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
I would say originally, in the same way that animals collect and share information, a pack of wolves hunting share. A pack of deer fleeing share. Bees share information. And clearly for people, the origins were evolutionary and therefore genetic, because it was a case of having dinner or being dinner.
Right.
And over time, though, I mean, I think that as we somewhat mutated from the bulk of the animal kingdom, we discovered that information could be fun. I mean, we could have Sappho's poetry, for example. We could have James Joyce. We could pass information from one age to another. I mean, I can read Plato and still laugh at his jokes, right? So,
Wow.
so but there's also, we've developed as a society. I can't swear anything for a lot of other societies, but there's a lot of redundancy. There's a lot of things that become habit. I mean, if you think about, well, corporate life and government life and how much paper is generated, even if it's electronic paper, for useless stuff, totally useless stuff, and stuff that's completely misunderstood, even when somebody looks at it. So I don't know. You've asked a tough question.
Well, you kind of implied an answer to this one. Is this need or want to collect information more innate or more invented?
I think, and I can only speak for myself here, I am infamous among my friends for the amount of data collection and organization that I do. And for me, I couldn't live any other way. And I've been like that since I was a child. So it's innate for me.
Yeah. Do thoughts create emotions?
Well, they can, of course. If I think right now, like you're in Venice, and I think of my friend George, who passed away this year and who lived in Venice for a while, that creates an immediate emotion. So yes, a thought can create an emotion. Of course, the emotion can also create a thought.
Yeah. Fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I.
In my case, till I write it down and then recursively do it 3 more times.
Yeah. Well, McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion said that. I don't know what I think until I write it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can humans think without language?
That is another toughie. I don't. Well, okay. So we know that some animals have self-awareness, some level of self-awareness. You put an octopus in front of a mirror, they actually know they're looking at themselves. Most dogs do too, etc. So what are they thinking? Well, they're thinking something. Do they have a lot of language? At a higher level of thought, no. I think you absolutely need language to get beyond a certain basic level of self-awareness.
But Brenda, I'm really curious. How do we know we can't speak octopus or dog language? How do we know they recognize themselves?
There have been a fair number of scientific studies on this, which was surprising in terms of how they react to the mirror image. And it's funny what animals do and what animals don't. So
you mean the way the social, whatever, the scientist studies the animal, they conclude, oh, they know they're seeing themselves.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
But that could be not accurate, it seems.
There have been so many experiments done like this over so many species that I'm inclined to accept that as a
good. I like that. Okay. Chomsky says that language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
Another 2-part answer. So now that I'm retired, I'm getting to finally give myself the education I always wanted. And part of that is reading things I never had time to read. And one of the things I'm amazed by is the difficulty of being a translator. And not any translator, but particularly being a translator of poetry. I have 6 volumes of Sappho. No 2 of them read the same way.
Wow.
And all of them are plausible. There's one I prefer, but all of them are highly plausible, well researched, well thought through. They all say different things. And I always read the footnotes, the translate notes, the introductions, etc. They all talk about how there are things that can be said readily in other languages that just don't translate.
Wow.
And that to me is, I would never have believed that when I was very young, but clearly it's the case. So there is that. That's one level. That's kind of literary and cross-cultural stuff. But I think thinking about our country today and the situation that we have, it appears to me that people at both ends, right and left, appear to be using the same language, but in fact are not. Because I think that people are completely, each time there's this people missing what the other side is saying.
Yeah.
And the words are just going right by them. And so is that just the problem of education? I don't think so, because it happens at all educational levels. Is it connotation? Is it denotation? What is it? I don't know. I don't have an answer, but it appears to me that even though on the surface they're speaking the same language, that below that there is a real big disconnect.
What do? You're at a grocery store line and communication breakdown with the clerk or whatever. What do you do when communication breaks down?
The best thing I can think of to do is to reframe, try and communicate slowly, use smaller bits, smaller blocks of language, simplify, and make it as concrete as possible.
Yeah.
George Orwell on language, always use the concrete word when you can. He was absolutely correct, I believe.
Wow. Concrete word. That is good. You said a lot there. So let's see. Your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
Oh, I would say much more feeling beings. I do think that reason and civilization is a very thin veneer over a not well understood animal.
Yeah. 2 questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. 1, is thinking a function of the soul?
What is the soul?
That's the Irish. They go, you Irish people answer questions with questions. And the Irishman goes, we do, eh? That you win again, because that's what the series is all about, is inventing new questions and new metaphors. But in general, we've got sort of like a collective hunch what the soul is. I mean, Lily Tomlin says reality is just a collective hunch, but we use words. In general, we kind of, me and you, know what me and you might mean by soul. What do you think, in a general sense, is thinking a function of the soul?
I would say yes. It definitely is.
Yeah.
When I was young, no one prodded me to think. Right? It just happened.
Wow.
Right? It was spontaneous combustion.
Yeah.
It caused me a lot of trouble in elementary school, trust me.
But wait, how many kids were in your family?
Well, there were 5.
So were the others all thinking and you were like, I'm following along, or did?
No, there was a 12-year gap between myself and my next youngest sibling.
Yeah.
My oldest one was 18 years old. So they were from a completely different generation.
Yeah.
They were 40s, post World War II. It was a different world.
But were they thinking-ish?
No, they were very goal-oriented, career-oriented.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say thinkers. I would say more about doing what they needed to do to develop careers. Now, 2 of them got PhDs. I still never thought of them as thinkers.
Wow, that's heavy. Okay, we're going to get in, Pam. Let me ask you the other Turing question. Can machines think?
Not yet. Not yet, but there's all this noise. And in fact, the last position I had was with an AI company.
Yeah.
And I was the chief strategy officer. And I got to think a lot about AI and what's
Yeah.
going on in AI. And uh, I think it's going to be a very, very long time before we have a self-aware machine.
Yeah.
But I believe we can have a self-aware machine. And I think it'd be good if we did.
Really good. Really good. Brendan, what a pleasure. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
I don't see a differentiation between the two. I mean,
Well, Viktor, let me clarify. Viktor Frankl says meaning tends to last and happiness doesn't.
oh, he should read better stuff, and he should drink Burgundy. Change his opinion.
Well, have you read Man's Search for Meaning, or you're just saying it? Do you know
No,
that?
I've never read that. No.
Oh, okay. Okay. I love it. Yeah, you're like the first person. Everybody goes, I drop, eyebrow name, Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. And people go, oh, yeah, I love that book. You're the first one, like, that guy should.
Well,
That was good. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, for me, there's not really a clear demarcation. I can't imagine being happy without meaning.
Yeah.
To me, that's an unimaginable dichotomy.
Yeah. Wait, does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more detecting it or more creating it?
But I think they're the same thing.
Yeah.
I think it's like the dichotomy in physics between matter and particles, waves and particles. It's the same. To me, there is absolutely no thought without a brain, right?
Yeah.
Kill the brain, thought dies. So the two are intrinsically, they're the same thing. They're just different aspects of the same thing. One is physical, and one is the perceptions that we get from that.
You mean the wave is physical and the particle is perception? How would you break?
Yeah, that's call it that. I mean, that's
okay.
Well,
that's now we can finally bring up Zappa because he says in a magazine an article, wavicle. And I says, wow, I thought Frank maybe came up with that. But then I found out someone else said wavicle years before he did.
Yes, he was borrowing that.
You know that term wavicle?
Yes, it shows up in physics.
Do you know the origin?
No, I don't remember it, but I'm going to say 50s, late 50s, early 60s. It's a Google thing.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so what's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Well, since nothing can go faster than the speed of light, that's the limit. I would say light.
Yeah. Audre Lorde, the poet, said you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer responded to her and said, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Well, I'm sorry to do this, but it's a two-part answer again.
Don't be sorry at all. I love that.
I would say there are two things that would be helpful.
Yeah.
One is for people just to slow down.
Yes. Wow.
Just slow down and think, and really think it through. Don't be impulsive. Think it through 3 times. You might be right by the 3rd time.
Yeah.
The other tool, of course, is that assuming AI development continues, I do think eventually that will be a very, very powerful tool.
Wow, that is good. I got to tell you this Don Marquis quote because I love this. I want your reaction, please. If you make people think they're thinking, they'll love you. If you really make them think, they'll hate you.
Oh, he's absolutely correct. He is absolutely correct. That's a wonderful quote.
Isn't that amazing? You really made me think I hate you. That's funny. Okay. What new toy do you suggest?
New toy. Could you elucidate the context slightly?
Yeah, that's like I kept asking what new tool you suggest, and someone said, "Well, I would suggest a new toy." And so now I just ask people toy. So, you put it in any context you want. Yeah,
Well, I would say a lot of people, not all people, but a lot of people might have a lot of fun getting a set of geometry drawing tools, and
yeah,
a compass, a straight edge, protractor, etc., and doing some of the classic construction problems in geometry. It's a really good brain tease.
yeah. See, that's they people would say, "Well, that's a tool," but in fact, you can put it in the context of a toy. You do your job, then you go home and draw some geometry side. That was
Yeah, yeah.
Brendan. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
I really don't.
Yeah,
I mean, life is too short.
yeah, it's good. McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions. So we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
I would say, first of all, I don't fully buy that artists are. Some artists,
Yeah, so yeah,
some.
let's
Um, and secondly, reality is not a subject most people are interested in.
yeah.
I mean, look, unreality has paid off really well for Disney and Hollywood, and we could make a very, very long list. Reality, well, look what happened to Socrates.
Yeah. That is so practical. Do artists have moral obligation?
No more than any other human does.
Yeah. McLuhan said that everybody experiences far more than they understand. Yet it is experience rather than understanding that influences behavior. Now, I'm not trying to hold him to these, he's just sort of throwing out probes. But the way I interpret that could be wrong. I think he's saying, if the kid comes in from the cold and the parent goes, "Don't touch the stove, you'll burn your hand." That's experience. If the parent goes, "Let me teach you the dynamics of heat, you can get your hands really close to the stove, rub them, and get your hands warm." That's understanding. What do you think he's saying there? Is he saying experience shapes our behavior and we should have understanding more so shape our behavior, or something else?
No, I think that's exactly what he's saying, is that experience is the shaper, but that more understanding is desirable.
That we should desire to get more understanding.
Yes, yes, because otherwise it's doing something by rote, by habit, without actually knowing why one is doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, and back to Turing, he said, what we want is a machine that can learn from experience. So here, there's two parts of that. What we want, who is he saying we is? And is that a statement you agree with? What we want is a machine that can learn from experience?
Yes, I absolutely believe that it would be a very good thing. A self-aware machine would have to be self-aware
Yeah.
in order to learn from experience. Yes, I think that'd be excellent.
Yeah. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Uh, I'm not afraid of new ideas. Well, let's put it this way. I'm not afraid of ideas that have been thought through. I don't really care what the age is.
Yeah.
People throw out a lot of things constantly, right? And they're clearly not well thought through. They're completely half baked. That worries me. Any idea that's actually been really well thought through, it's welcome. I don't care what age or what provenance it is.
Wow. Very good. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever, or one of them?
Yes. Um, yes. I was in my crib, and I got up because there was a I guess some piece of art that was hanging over my bed. And I got up and I was looking at it and I guess making noise. And I stood up. I was in my crib and I remember my mother and my sister running and going, "The baby's up," and shushing me to get back to sleep. So I would have been 2, perhaps, I'm guessing, when it occurred, But I remember that very, very clearly.
Wow. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Oh, well, that depends how your life has gone, right? I think for me, I tend to remember a good deal of what happened in my life. And sometimes it takes me a long time to come to grips with some incidents, right? That's most people. I talked to somebody about this years ago. He said, "Look, Brendan, your brain, it's like this. It's like you're in a big room and you walk around and that's your memory, and you can walk from one side of the room to the other, and it's kind of all there if you just walk to it and look at it." He said most people, their memory is a long corridor. And they go further and further down that corridor and they see less and less of where they've been. I can't tell you which is better.
Yeah, it's good. Tell me someone within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model, and what specifically was that impact?
In my family, it's easy. My father was a bright, thoughtful, very hardworking man, very, very disciplined. And I didn't even appreciate till I got older how hard he worked and how disciplined was his life a lot of the time, but he still had fun. My first music teacher was a fellow named Bob Bianco, who taught people like Eddie Palmieri, studied with him, for example, both the Palmieri brothers, if you know about Latin jazz.
Oh yeah, yes,
other people like that, and Bob was he was this very brilliant guy who loved philosophy, never read any fiction or poetry in his life, but read every classical work of philosophy there was, and was a serious thinker about a lot of things. And years later, I would disagree with him about many of his conclusions, but I'm absolutely in debt always that he was there early in my life and such a good influence.
Wow. Yeah. Back to your first one. Where'd you get your work ethic from?
Well, I guess my dad was an example, but I was always of the opinion that if you're going to do something, do it well, do it to the best you can do it. So I just tend to be, I tend to drive a lot of my friends and family crazy. Okay.
Where's that from, though, Brendan? What is that? Do with the best you can from the way your parents raised you or on your own?
No, I think it's more genetic, actually. Yeah, I think it's intrinsic.
Yeah. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
Yes. Roman Catholic.
Me too. Did you check out?
Oh, at age 12, I was gone.
Age 12.
Yes.
Do you pray?
No. Why do that?
That is a great. Why do that? If God, Brendan, you're a riot. This is so fun, especially on a Sunday. I love this. Why do that? No, you got to hear this one. Most people check out between 13 and 18. I don't even ask them anymore. Did you check out? And I go, but I often just slip it in. Do you pray? And this woman looked at me and says, "For parking spaces." Okay. But if God does exist, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Well, I'd like him to apologize.
I love that answer. I get that answer more and more now. You mean apologize to you specifically or to the whole thing? Like, why for the whole thing?
I would say to the universe for the whole thing. Yes.
Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
No, evil people exist.
So here's the hidden question really is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurai. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Yeah, I would actually agree with that. I would completely agree with that.
And then how would you advise someone to deal with an enemy?
If possible, just ignore them.
Yeah.
That's the very first thing. If possible. It's not always possible, right?
Yeah.
So,
but Nassim Taleb has this interesting quote. He says that let me see. Let me get to that so I don't blow it here. Games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. Then my friend said, well, villains don't think they are bad. They want control. Heroes want freedom. Gregory Bateson says, if a criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he go, oh, I did something morally and socially wrong? So there's a lot of prompts there, but the basic question is, does punishment work?
Well, thinking back to the nuns. I mean, it can, of course. Will it always work? No, clearly not. Will it work some of the time? Yes.
Yeah.
Are there people who are criminals because of circumstances, upbringing, whatever? I mean, poor people will steal. That's just a given. They don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Are there people who really are evil, who take delight in causing harm to others? Yes. What can you do with them? Nothing that I know of. Put them away. That's it.
Yeah. Wow. James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin. He basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Well, if I was being snide, I'd say that depends on the play. But
wait, if you were being, what was the
snide?
Snide.
It depends on the play. But I do think, it's funny. A friend was trying to, an old friend who used to read a lot, has in her late age has switched to television and was telling me all the things I could watch on television. And I made notes. I said, well, she's a very smart person and maybe this. So I look into it. And one thing was a series. And so I wrote her back and I said, the short story this series is based on, you can read the whole thing in 20 minutes, but it's almost 100 hours to watch the series. Why would I want to do that? I could actually write a full-length novelization of it in probably 100 hours. I think that for a lot of people, and a lot of stuff in the entertainment world, that it distracts us. It's a distraction. It's a distraction from daily life. It's a distraction from realizing, of course, that that life ends, etc. Yeah. But there's some things that make us think and feel more, right? That make us more human.
Yeah.
And I mean, Sappho's not entertaining, but she definitely makes you feel more.
Wow. I like this line, make us more human. Yeah. Because that's like the old days. You go, well, if you watch TV, you're dumb. If you read books, you're smart. And, it's like every medium has services and disservices. But I guess me and you probably have a bias. We think books are better. I mean, books are better than TV.
There can be good television. It's just the economics of television are against it, because the main thing, it is a product to sell advertising,
Yeah.
and you have to get the customer coming back. It's the same thing you want with cigarettes and drug use, right? You
Yeah.
want the customer to keep coming back. And
Yeah.
so when television really excels, I think, is when it does um, really good made for TV movies. That there are plenty. When it
Yeah.
does mini series that are time limited, that are highly focused, I think, and educational things can
Yeah.
actually be really good. But there's a built-in bias to make it kind of not good most of the time.
Yeah. It's really good. Great observation, because this is the New York Times TV critic. So even though he's criticizing DB, he's also selling it. This was in 2017. That's the cable news business model. Conflict means urgency, and urgency means viewers glued to the channel. It's a machine designated to generate stress and negative emotion. So Trump doesn't actually lack that. His entire philosophy has been fighting is humankind's most productive state. So the question is, what is humans' most productive state?
It's definitely not fighting.
It's definitely not fighting. Yeah.
No. I would say it's actually thinking and collaborating.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of fighting.
Yeah. And what is the human condition? Because is conflict the human condition?
It often seems it is, but I think that that's a choice that individuals and societies make.
Yes, we make that decision. Right. Okay, that was good. Walk us through your career briefly, Brendan. What, I mean, you've done a lot. You told me basically management consulting. Okay, so let's say, what was the tipping point? Where did you go to college to study? What was the tipping point? That's what I want to do. What sort of kicked you over? Yeah.
Well, no, there wasn't. I have to confess, my college career, I was a theater dance major. Now, why was I a theater dance major? It's because I was a music student on my own, studying with Bob and other people privately.
Yeah.
I was going to meet somebody at Queens College for lunch, and I got lost. And I wandered into a modern dance class, and I'd never seen anything like this.
Yeah.
And there was a young lady with the most gorgeous pale blue eyes who took a look at me and said, "You can stay." So I missed lunch. I stayed, and then at the end of the class, I talked to her, because of course I would, and she said, "Well, come back anytime, and here's the schedule." And I got to know her well, and I fell in love with dance. So I went to the head of the department and I said, "Look, I have zero experience. I've never done any of this in my life, but I would love to, and I do know music, so I understand something about rhythm." The following semester, there I was in college. I was a theater dance student. So I had a wonderful time for 2.5 years. I learned a lot. I saw the world, learned to see the world completely differently. And years later, I found that Paul Taylor, actually, when he would audition dancers, he did something that I do, which is he would just look at how they did ordinary movements. He'd invite them to walk around the room, sit in a chair, get up, go to work at a table, and watch that. And if they did all of that to his satisfaction, then he would do the formal, like, let's go out. Wow. So it was a wonderful experience. So how I came to technology and management consulting was, in fact, a total accident. So I had the algorithmic composition experience, which was useless for getting a real job or actually making any kind of money. My girlfriend went back to grad school, and she had a course in operations research that was killing her and killing a lot of her friends. And I wound up thinking, geez, this can't be that hard, right? And so I started reading the textbook. And I thought, oh, this is fun. This is kind of like what I know how to do already, but it's just really a very different application. And the person who taught that course got to know me, the head of the department, and encouraged me to pursue a different track in my life. And actually got me a consulting job with AT&T as my first client. And it was a very junior thing, but it was something, and one thing led to another. And I just had a knack for spotting patterns and likely probable events.
Let's go back to dance for a second, because I asked Rudy Perez, who died just recently, all these same questions. And one of his dance pieces I love, because he was hanging out with more avant-garde dance people in New York years ago, is he'd come onto the stage and sit on a stool and smoke a cigarette. Talk about Paul Taylor, like, let me just see how you're ordinary. And I love this Sam Wasson quote about Bob Fosse. He says, Bob Fosse, as dancers, acted like they were dancing. They weren't dancing, they were acting like they were dancing. So is that what? And my favorite cliche about dance is, if you can't say it, sing it. If you can't sing it, dance it.
That's actually very true.
It is. It's an amazing art form, and it seems like it was a logical thing, or no, an organic sort of thing, that you morphed from this dance music into management consulting. So there is creativity, we know, in the music and dance world, but screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process as a management consultant?
Well, for me, it was always about practical solutions to problems.
Yeah.
I was very interested in I hated the whole consulting world of selling yet more consulting.
Yeah.
I was all, how do you get to a solution that you can really implement, that's really doable, that's really maintainable? That was always what really interested me. And so my approach was very different from a lot of my peers.
Wow. So Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. What role does that client play in your creative process as a management consultant?
That would really vary by client. I mean, were there, with some, there was a lot of collaborative teamwork. With some, they had to be led to the trough, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that just varies so much, like people do.
And so Duchamp also said, there's no solution because there's no problem. How do you process that quote in your world?
Well, I don't know where he was living, but I think in daily life in the 20th and 21st century, yeah, there's just a lot of problems, and some, not all, are soluble. But
sort of like Buster Keaton saying, you turn a stumble into a dance. So why call it a stumble when you can call it a dance? I think that's what Marcel Duchamp is saying. Why call it a solution? Why call it a problem in the first place?
I think because you actually, all people involved in whatever the situation is, need to understand that something is not working.
Yeah.
And the word that we use for that in our language is problem.
Yeah.
And so we can make it glossy and kind of arty and say, oh, it's not really a problem, it's a this or that. But you know what? It's a problem. And so
Brendan, you are smart. I'm learning so much. I really am grateful. What's the difference between art and science?
I actually think of art as kind of applied science in a way. Science that's more felt, perhaps, than thought, but I think them as two sides of the same coin. And I think great artists know a lot, at least intuitively, they understand a lot about mathematics. and in visual arts, they'll understand a lot about color
Yeah.
and shape and form. So I see them as very closely connected. I do not see them as different.
Yeah. Thelonious Monk said music is mathematics.
Yeah, absolutely correct.
Wow.
Absolutely correct. Yeah.
Here's a couple things on art. I'm curious your reaction. Mike Kelly, art is making your problems everybody else's problems.
Well, I guess it can be for some people. No, that's I would disagree with that as a general statement. Although I guess
Good.
with one person it could be true.
I would say it was that Woody Allen's motive. You know, he makes his problem everybody's problem.
Yes, but when Turner paints a painting, he's not doing that, and they both are.
That's right. Good. He's not. Turner's not making a problem. He's obsessed with weather. Yeah. What is it? He's obsessed with the beauty of
Yes.
paint on canvas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's the Fanny Howe the poet. The point of art is to show people that life is worth living by showing that it isn't.
Oh, I would disagree with that completely.
Yeah.
I think, well, first of all, and I'll use Turner as an example. I mean, a lot of his paintings he never showed. He did them because he was moved to do them.
Wow.
And it didn't matter if anybody else actually saw them, looked at them, applauded them, whatever. So, and I think that's true of so many people. I think back to the number of composers whose work gets discovered after their death, and just because, whatever. I mean, Charles Ives, he was not out to change the universe. That's something he did when he wasn't selling insurance, right? So,
well, that's compulsion. Is that compulsion?
I don't know if it's compulsion. I mean, I think compulsion has connotations that may not apply. I think it's just, if there's something one loves, one does it, and you may not need to share it with anyone for it to be enjoyable for you.
Right. Well, that's Zappa said, I write this music for myself. Other people like it. That's a bonus. Like, but to me, he was raised in a capitalistic society, and he knew, if I write these notes, sing these lyrics, people will buy my music, then I can make more music. So I think he was over romanticizing that. You know how artists go, I just do this for myself. And what do you think of that?
I absolutely believe him. Now, would he have been doing something else for a living? Yes, but I still believe he would have made music. He would have created music. It was in his lifeblood to do that, whether or not he could make a living. Charles Mingus at one point left the world of music and went to work in the post office for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Lee Konitz went to work as a cab driver for some years.
Yeah.
You can go down the list of people who didn't make a living from their art, but they loved doing it anyway, so they did it.
Yeah, Charles Ives was kind of smart. He says, I'll just make my money being an insurance man, and then I can do whatever I want with music.
Yes. Well, that was dictated by the economics of having a very large family.
That's why he did it.
Yes. He knew he couldn't actually afford that family as a musician. If you've been single, if you've been Walt Whitman, who knows?
Yeah. So McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness. Knife and fork extends our teeth. Shutter in a camera. Projector extends our eyelid. Maybe even non-tangible, like religion or philosophy, extends consciousness. What's your tool? The computer, the keyboard, the pen? What's your main tool as a management consultant? Would you say the writing utensil?
No, for me, it was absolutely pen.
Pen, okay.
Yeah. Oh, pencil, really, even more.
Okay, what is the pen? What is the pencil? What the eraser? That's good. What does the pencil extend? What humanness does it extend for you?
Well, for me, it allowed me to collect my thoughts and really think them through and revise them readily before taking any further steps.
Yeah. And just back to music, your piano. What does the piano extend for you?
Oh, for me, it was a composition tool.
Yeah.
Really, it was a way of trying out compositional ideas.
Yeah.
I would have been just as happy not to play it, but can't do that and compose.
Let's stay on music for a second. What's the function of music?
Well, if I knew the answer to that, I would know a lot.
Well, what's your guess?
Well, I do think that early on in our evolution, music and language were the same thing, and that they split along the way. So I think early on the function was signaling and information. What is it today? Does it need a function? I mean, I don't know. It can be beautiful. It can be terrible. It can be ugly. It can move us in positive ways. It can move me to shut the door. I don't know that there is really why does it survive? Clearly, it's beyond my ability to say why, but it does.
You anticipated. What's more fundamental, music or language?
Music.
Wow.
Yeah, music and actually dance, with the two would be connected, right? Because it's movement.
Yeah.
And it's sound through movement. And that's where it started. Language, I'm sure, happened later.
Tell me a instrumental that makes you laugh.
An instrumental that makes me laugh. Give me a second. This is a very tough one. Well, it makes me laugh because it's really atrocious.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus! Almost anything by Neil Young, for example, will do that.
But that's not instrumental.
Well, that's true. Well, he has those terrible solos that just meander. And I thought for his next birthday, somebody should get him a third chord.
That is good. Okay. My friend says 3 T's of music are taste, technique, and theory. So you learn the technique, you know the structure. How does one acquire taste?
In part, I do not think this is the full answer. Some of it, I think, is intrinsic. People are just inclined more one way than another, but a good deal of it is by actually hearing great music.
Yeah.
If you immerse yourself in great music, it's really hard to listen to bad music.
Yeah.
And you know what the difference is, even if you can't really articulate it clearly, you know what the difference is.
Yeah. McLuhan said song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical taste is ultimately connected to language difference. Any comment?
I don't entirely buy that, because so much music around the world in many cultures is instrumental and is not based on language.
There you go.
I mean, Japanese court music, the music of Chinese scholars, Persian classical music.
Yep.
So I don't really buy that. On the other hand, if you look at African music, what do Africans do? It's great. They sing, they play, they dance. And it's not 3 different things. It's one thing, right? It's actually pretty amazing. Indian musicians, the classical musicians, they get taught by someone who can teach them. That person may not even play their instrument. That person might teach them, might be a dancer, it might be a vocalist, it might be an instrumentalist, and you learn about music from your mentor, and then apply it to your instrument. So
it's really good, Brendan. It's James Brown said it that best. He says, I've got a move that tells me what to do. how to move. That's like dance tells me what to do. And he said, where'd you get your music? He says, from Africa. And then they asked King Sunny Adi, where'd you get your music? He says, from James Brown. That full circle Mobius strip. It's like perfect.
Yeah.
So I talked to Michael Apted 40 years ago, and I said, why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast? Most people don't know Abel Gance invented rapid montage in 1922, but in the 80s, it really flourished with MTV to the point where Marty Scorsese says, I cut my films faster because of MTV. Michael Apted said, because we've learned to take in information faster. I asked this question with the bias. Can we actually learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
Oh, I think it's brainwashed, and I think attention spans are getting shorter, if anything.
There's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions, but that one you got right. Okay, so is it literally possible for humans to multitask?
Well, the example I normally use is I'd like to see somebody who can, say, sing an aria, juggle a chainsaw and a bowling ball while they tap dance. Now, anybody who can do that, they're definitely multitasking. I could not do that. I could not begin to do it. When I do something, I have to actually really do it. I have to be focused.
We had a performer on Venice Boardwalk who would juggle chainsaws and eat an apple while he's doing it. That's almost there. but literally, Brendan, he is biting the apple, then juggling, then biting the apple. So that's doing two different things that are really fast.
Right.
What was the motive of the cave artist?
Well, the art changes. And the earliest art, we are still part of the animal kingdom. You can see it in the art. I was shocked when I was reading about cave art to see this difference where it changes. And early on, I think it's maybe a sense of maybe it's early worship, maybe it's a recording, maybe it's a way of teaching, of passing on information since we didn't have written language. Later, it changes, and you can see that we're no longer part of the animal kingdom. It's kind of them and us.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely changed.
Really good. Perfectly leads into the archive question. So we're doing a project on archiving. The attitude is sort of like, can be Ram Dass, be here now, live in the moment. Why do we want to collect stuff from the past when we can live in the moment? Wyndham Lewis said, artists, and we could just say people, live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. But, we invented the word archive, 1400s, keep safe, free from harm, preserve as evidence. Is archiving more innate or more invented?
Oh, I would say innate.
It's innate, huh?
Yeah. And well, I believe it's a way of passing on information. I mean, imagine no archives and you had to reinvent physics and therefore calculus every generation.
That would be great, wouldn't it? Then we'd
that'd be bloody awful.
But you must know the thing about unlearning, like unlearn and don't rely on the old. But isn't there some unlearning in your management consultant? Like,
yes, it's always wise to think about what you're doing, how you're going to do it in the light of reality, which means really looking at the reality.
Yeah.
And that may call for saying, oh, I need to take a very fresh approach. But in fact, without the experience of many generations before us, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. It would be impossible, right? So I think archiving is a good thing.
Yeah.
If it doesn't become a coffin.
Wow, that's the amazing thing I left out, because the Egyptians they put stuff in their coffin with them.
Well, in case they woke up and wanted to read, I understand that.
That's the McLuhan joke. If we didn't invent the light bulb, we'd had to no. Yeah, if we didn't invent the light bulb, we'd had to watch TV in the dark.
Very good. Very, very good.
What's more important, conviction or compromise?
I would say conviction, but not to be rigid.
Yeah.
That's very important. It's important to have a standard. It's also important to understand give and take, and that as social beings, other people have other viewpoints, many of which are valid. I argue with with somebody in my family who's, say, from a completely other side of this political spectrum than I am, that in fact in a healthy society, conservatives and progressives talk, and they share ideas and they share opinions. The example I use is, so our ancestors at one point were up in the trees, and some of them decided it might be a good idea to get on the ground and see what's there. And we can imagine the fuss that happened with some of them going, no way, no way. You get killed if you go down there. It's just awful. And some of them go, no, no, we'll take a chance. And of course, many of the ones that went down early did die. They got eaten. They got things happen to them. And so that's the first split between conservative and progressive in our evolution. And so some of them stayed in the trees and are still there. And some of the progressives did die, but by and large, the human race migrated to the ground out of the trees, which is my argument for why you need both sides. You need actually conservative and progressive. They need to speak together. They need to share ideas. But because circumstances change, more often the progressive will be correct.
Wow, that was good because Leonard Cohen says something about the whole to sell a concert you have to be able to have risk, and if you're not risking, the audience knows it. What role does risk taking play in your management consulting?
Only to put forth ideas that I clearly believed in, even if I knew they were very different than the ideas that were ordinarily proposed.
Yeah.
And sometimes that cost me money, income, and sometimes it worked out fine.
Yeah. Your observations of humans in general, are we more, is ambition based more on fear or joy?
For most humans, unfortunately, I'd say fear. For some humans, some percentage, it's definitely joy.
You've accomplished a lot in your life, how do you rate these three elements: luck, skill, and ambition? What played the biggest role, second and third?
Well, I think I haven't really accomplished anything of note, to be quite honest, compared to any of the people I really admire. But there's always an element of luck. And so many things in my life came down to right place or wrong place, that happens. But in terms of how I actually did things in given circumstances, that was always down to ambition, and not necessarily monetary ambition, but ambition to learn more, to do more, to solve a specific problem.
Yeah.
So money was always the secondary issue.
T.S. Eliot said poetry's outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Oh, I would say it's English with an Irish accent.
But I mean, what form is your inner consciousness in? More metaphorically.
Could you elucidate that slightly?
Yeah, that was good. Your inner dialogue is in English, but what is it besides? That's sort of literally saying language. What is the form of your inner consciousness? When you have your inner self talking to you, what form does it take? other than spoken word or printed word?
It actually is almost always language, verbal for me.
It is verbal language,
Yeah,
yeah.
there are people. I have many. I've got a friend who's a physicist who definitely it's image, it's structure,
Yeah.
it's a picture. For me, it's almost always language or numbers.
Yeah, amazing.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so
Two of my film heroes said their mantra is ignore yourself. Jonas Mekas says there is no self-expression. Cecil Taylor says I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. Is art making more self-expression or more your vehicle for whatever environments, technologies, and culture is dominant?
oh, I would say it is self-expression. I mean, even if an artist perceives uh, like Cecil Taylor does, and many others say very similar things, that it's coming from kind of out there and they're channeling it. Um, I'm not the least bit metaphysical, so I would say no. It's absolutely internal to that person. It can be a response to their environment, of course it is, but it is internal.
Can art making be egoless?
Realistically, probably not. I don't think so. I think even with the firmest intention to do so, there's always going to be um, the history, one's life history will always determine, even unconsciously, lots and lots of choices that we make. And so, to that extent, it's not egoless.
Is perception reality?
Well, that you ask tough questions. Is perception reality? Uh it is. Let me say this. It is like seeing a shadow of reality.
Wow, that's good. McLuhan translated or kind of probed Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce saying, artists dream awake. Everybody has these amazing scenarios in the middle of the night. And some people actually dream while they're awake. Not to be a elitist artist. Have dreams played a role in your creative process?
Oh, always, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, always. And I completely agree with dreaming while awake. Yes, that's absolutely true.
Brendan, tell me your history with Joyce. Did you pick him up, started reading Joyce because school was requiring it? And then how did you're getting to Finnegan's Wake?
Well, at the schools I went to, they didn't know who James Joyce was. So no. I how did I find? I read something somewhere about Joyce that intrigued me when I was a teenager. And so I went and I got a copy of Ulysses. And I read Ulysses, and I knew a lot of it was going right by me,
Yeah.
but I really, really liked it. It was like nothing else I'd ever read in my life. And I thought, wow, this is really great. So I thought, I'm going to love the next one, Finnegan's Wake. So I got a copy of that. And I got through maybe 50 pages and had not a clue what was going on. The only thing I figured out was that if I was going to understand it at all, I had to read it aloud.
Wait, you didn't hear or read that Joyce kind of required that. You picked that up on your own.
Well, yeah, because I was reading the page and it made sense. If I kind of said the words, I got a lot more sense out of it than if I was just reading it. No, I didn't know anybody who knew who James Joyce was until middle age.
So that was teen. You're reading it out loud. So how much did you get through then after you started reading out loud?
Well, I got through about 100 pages, and I decided that I wasn't understanding a lot of the allusions in it, and that it was going right by me, and that I needed more education first to do that. And unfortunately, it's taken my adult life to get that far. So,
did you ever have you had involvement in Finnegan's Wake reading clubs since those teen years?
No, no, I only since I resigned from my last position and decided I would never ever ever do it again. Uh, I decided I would spend as much time as I could doing the things that I always wanted to do, things that I loved. And looking around, I was pleasantly surprised to find out that there were a handful of reading clubs that I think I would have a lot of fun in. So that's how I found the Finnegan's Wake Club.
So you're in one. You're in one Finnegan's Wake reading club.
Yes, I wanted to do yours, but it's not working out with my schedule.
Yeah, but let's say one quote. Well, the Dublin one I really highly recommend. Sweeney's every Tuesday.
Oh, thank you.
That's the best. Okay, uh, T.S. Eliot said poetry can communicate before it's understood. Do you think that was what there was something being communicated to you, but you weren't understanding it?
In Finnegan's Wake, yes, absolutely. I
Yeah,
mean, there's a lot of noise about what it means.
yeah,
And perhaps it's meaningless or it's this or that. It's not meaningless. I mean,
yeah,
he was a brilliant guy. He knew what he was writing,
yeah,
and he wrote very very carefully. And he went back and he revised. That wasn't just for the sake of revising. He intended something. I don't know what that is yet, but if I
yeah,
live long enough, I might.
yeah. Brendan, how much do you think Joyce got the wake? It's a stupid question, like 0 to 100%. Just your hunch or guess. How much did he get it?
Oh, he definitely got it. Every word is there for a reason.
He got it 100%.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This was not a Jackson Pollock painting.
How much do you get the wake at this point?
Oh, 3%? 5%?
3 to 5%. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, the fact that you're sticking with it, that says a lot. Now, when he said epiphanies and everydayness, what do you think that means?
Uh, I'm going to say my reaction is that every day there's something fresh to be learned, to be experienced.
Yeah, it's good. He also said, I will try to express myself in portrait. He says this. I try to express myself in some mode of life or art as freely as I can and as wholly as I can, using for my defense the only arms I allow myself to use: silence, exile, and cunning. How do you interpret what he's saying with those three words?
I think he's a much smarter guy than I am, and that's the first thing. Um, Silence, exile, and cunning. Uh, Honestly, that's a question I'd have to come back to. I'd have to either
Yeah,
say there's actually so much ambiguity and thought behind that that's one worth thinking about.
yeah, it's good. And one more Joyce question. How is studying Finnegan's Wake or reading it shaped your behavior?
Oh, Jesus. Well, um, I would say I have more laughter in my life because he's a very funny fellow, and
That
that's probably the first thing I can think of. And because I'm a person who I enjoy puzzles of different sorts,
yes.
and language puzzles and poetry, and all of that's to be found there.
Poetry and puzzles. Boy, that's it. PAP, puzzles.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is. It's sort of like detective work.
yeah. The
Um,
fact,
Lewis Carroll says, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
no, I would say not. Um, there's I'm a born skeptic, so I don't believe anything till I think about
Yeah.
it.
Well, in your years as management consulting, how many years you do that? Like 30, 40 years?
Yeah, I guess it was 30 years, say.
Okay. Tell me one major element that stayed the same and one major element that changed.
Um, it became much more industrialized in the sense that there are large organizations that make very good livings from getting customers to mainline their services
Yeah.
and never actually solving a problem. That's not the point. The point is to extract the most revenue possible from a given client. And I think I saw a lot more of that happen over time. It just seemed to shift that way. Um, what stayed the same? At the end of the day, real analysis will tell. At the end of the day, you can't fake away a problem. You can't fake a solution. Real analysis, real numbers do tell the story. Although it can be hard to get people to listen to it.
Yeah. It's really good. Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
There's several of them. I would say, believe it or not, my poor memory for names, which is just really awful, got me to write a lot more and to really use pencil and paper a lot more to analyze situations, to think things through. That was probably the biggest one for me.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. That's what I do. People say, you're on the Zoom and your head's not looking up like this. It's because I'm looking down to take notes.
Of course, sure.
Yeah, and it's like, you should be engaged. I am, but I have this habit. I've got to take 3 to 4 pages of notes every interview.
Well, that's being actually really engaged in my book.
Yeah. Well, fill in the blank. Anger can be a productive emotion when
it is applied to a purpose.
Yeah. Can satire be destructive? I asked this guy who wrote comedy with Robin Williams. He says, that's the job of satire. And Swift says satire, compares it to a mirror in which people could see every face but their own. What's the function of satire?
I would say it is to show us it's a funhouse mirror.
Yeah.
But I also do think it can be destructive. Using Swift as an example, a modest proposal was actually discussed seriously in Parliament. There might not have been any Joyce. And of course, Aristophanes, very funny play, was it The Clouds, I think, helped convict Socrates.
Yeah. Wow. What's the most significant difference between men and women, physical aside?
Oh, I think fundamental methods of thought and feeling are very, very different. I know that's not considered politically correct these days, but I think women and men really perceive things differently and respond differently. And I think that's an evolutionary focus. Women tend to be, as a group, I've noticed, much more collaborative. I think they generally make better managers than men. Men tend to be, whether they're thinking about it or not, tend to be more power conscious.
Yeah.
More confrontational.
Yeah.
So I think there's a very large difference, and I think viva la difference. I'm well happy for it. So
wow, viva la difference. I like that. What caused matriarchy?
Well, I think there was another Aristophanes play that touches on that, but
what's the name of the play?
I'm trying to remember which one it is. It's the one where the wives go on strike unless a war stops. I read it a long time ago, but it's very funny. I don't know that there has ever been. I mean, there certainly has been at times matriarchy. It doesn't seem to be that widespread. I don't know what the cause is. I don't understand why, in a way, there it has been more of it because, as I just mentioned, my experience is that women as a group, not necessarily as individuals, do make better managers because they tend to be much more collaborative.
Yeah.
So
Wait, I'm doing research. This is amazing, Brendan. What's the spelling on the guy who wrote this book? The wives go on strike unless the war stops. How do you spell his name?
Aristopanes.
Great. That is so helpful. There's a line that goes, "You create what you resist." Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, morphed it into, "You are what you hate." James Joyce said, "It's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve." And Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, "Thank God I'm an atheist." How do you react to this line, "You create what you resist"? I'm not saying you, Brendan, but one creates what one resists. Any thoughts on that?
It's possible. I think a lot of broad sweeping generalizations are have limited value.
Yeah, it's good.
More nuance is better.
Can you forget to die?
You forget to die. How do you mean that?
Very good. There's one question that I just started asking the last couple of years. People aren't sure if they take it literally or metaphorically. So either way, it's you can put in the context you want.
Well, I don't really think about death. I mean, it will come. Everything will die sooner or later. The universe will die. I'm going to go with it, guaranteed.
Yeah.
And so I tend not to think about it or worry about it. As a practical matter, when it arrives, I'll deal with that then.
Yeah. How do you find peace of mind?
Oh, I do things I love, and I am people I care about.
Whoops, you froze up there. You do things you love, and then what'd you say?
And I embrace people I care about.
Beautiful. There's 5 Alan Watts questions off the top of your head in just a couple words. 1, who started it all?
A very large black hole.
Are we going to make are we going to make it?
Make it? As a race, the odds are looking worse.
3, where do we put it?
Where do we put it? Explain, please.
Well, that's just, again, you put it in the context you want. Where do we put it? He's making these questions with the it, so people are like the first one you nailed. I mean, so yeah, where do we put it?
I'll pass on that one.
4,
it's too metaphorical.
That's all right. 4, who's cleaning it up?
The good thing about the human race, when it eventually passes, is it won't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It matters to us. It will not matter to the universe at all.
Captain Beefheart wrote a poem. The stars are matter, we are matter, but it doesn't matter.
Damn straight.
The fifth Alan Watts, is it serious?
Only if you want it to be. It's more fun to laugh.
Yeah. Brendan, what a pleasure. Got a few more and we're out of here. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Don't take things too seriously. Study more math.
Nice. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
Well, over is easier, but it's marginal.
It's good. What a great word. If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
Not much.
They want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell?
Oh, burgundy.
Nice. If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed and what would it be made of?
I would say probably underwater in New York Harbor would be really ideal. And something that would last a while, but not forever. Wouldn't matter.
Very good. Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
Something good that I never had. I never learned to drive.
It's good. You never had it and you never want it. That's good.
Yeah, that's
That is, you know,
years and never did it.
no, it is so smart. I mean, I love. Okay, one of my favorite lines in movie history is in Repo Man. The guy goes, "The more you drive, the less intelligent you are." Isn't that a great written line?
That is a great, and it's probably true.
It is probably. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
I would say something very impolite to them as soon as I could.
Good answer. I don't really get that answer. What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Well, I can't say there is one that inspires me. What I would say the opposite of inspiration is that I see growing illiteracy and innumeracy. I don't see much that really inspires me. I'm inspired much less than I was 50 years ago. And I do not think that's just a factor of my age. I think that literally our society is in decay. As I'm reading through Greece and Rome, it's just amazing how things come out and wallop me like, oh, this sounds so much like,
Yeah.
and you can see it. And at a point in Rome in the 1st century AD, if you were educated, you could read and write Latin and Greek, and you probably knew a few other languages. Yet a few hundred years down the road, literacy is gone for all intents and purposes. It is a rarity.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't take long.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I think I'm seeing in our society today. I see less and less literacy, less and less numeracy, less and less knowledge.
Wow. What can we do about that?
AI, thank God. When we're done, we should have a really good machine here that knows what to do.
Wow. Love it. Most people just hate AI or they despise, oh my God, we're in trouble. It's like, well, it's another tool and it's going to have services and disservices. Let's learn to cope with what we don't like about it and move the project forward. In fact, all these questions, as soon as chatbot came out, I did not ask. And I was like, why aren't you asking? And it's too many buttons to push and I have too many things. I finally talked to this media, he taught communication at Amherst for 30 years. He's like a McLuhan, media analysis guy. And he let me just turn this off. Sorry, they're bugging me. They're actually bugging me because I'm going to tell you this truth in this. He said, well, I'll feed your first question in AI and send you. So it's called Google Bard, Google Bard. And he put, what is the best thing for a human being? And it printed out 3 answers, like pretty long. And, it was sort of hallmarky card, as he said, but it was still very intriguing. And I want to go through all these and just see. But that was good. And so go ahead.
You'll find if you try using these things, that AI will actually lie to you on occasion.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It will tell you something,
Yeah.
And if you go a little further, you realize, oh, that's a lie. And if you ask it, did you lie?
What's this?
Ask it, did you lie to me? And on occasion, it will tell you yes.
Oh my God, but that's amazing because that's a question I didn't ask you, and I'm going to go back and ask you. And this is Marcel Proust question. And every Vanity Fair, the last page, they have the Marcel Proust questionnaire. On what occasion do you lie?
I try not to unless it's needed for politeness.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be polite, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I've been able to cut enough cords in my life just to the essential ones.
Yeah.
I have very few people that I would actually need to lie to anymore.
Yeah. What's one question that remains unresolved for you?
Is my philosophy, my belief about life correct? Which I will probably never have an answer to.
Yeah.
That's probably the top one. And the second one is that one of the issues in our society is current economic and financial practice. And without making it a long, deep story, the development of financial economics in the 50s and 60s and 70s by very bright people changed everything. And a lot of what we see as social and political problems, it's like an iceberg. The part that really causes those is out of view, and it's economic. It's not social or political. And so the change from when you and I were young, you take a company like IBM or AT&T. AT&T had Bell Labs, and it had a big infrastructure, and the Bell system had a big infrastructure and kind of was pseudo lifetime employment. And IBM had the Watson Labs and had lots and lots of employees, etc. Philips in Europe had the equivalent of Bell Labs there, etc. Now you move forward into the effect of financial economics on management. And what happened was that before that, the stock market didn't matter. People cared about getting dividends. That meant the company was doing well. Or in the case of somebody like Digital Equipment Corp, that the dividends were reinvested automatically. They weren't actually paid out. But the companies were driven by normal things, with sales and profit and assets all having weight. Since the 70s, increasingly, and today it's all a game. It's a betting economy, and the bet has nothing to do with actual value. It has to do with stock market value, which is a fiction, right? It's a fiction that people agree on. You can look at who's that awful person, Elon Musk. In 1 year he's worth $25 billion, and the next year he's worth $250 billion. And it's not because he's smart, because he's not that smart. He is very lucky though. And it's not that much happened during the year, except that a lot of people who are part of the betting economy decided to bet on holdings that he owns. But there's no additional value. You look at the numbers, there's no additional productivity, there are no additional jobs, there's no additional profits for people, and you go down the list. So I think that this incredible distortion of how we view business and how we view organizations and the fallout of that is it is having this huge, horrible effect across our society and globally. And I actually don't see a way out of it.
Yeah.
Because too many people are making too much money, at least short term, from betting.
Yeah.
And there was I can't remember who it was. Very good economics writer wrote once that the market, short term, it's a popularity machine. It's a voting machine. but long term, it's a weighing machine, and what it weighs is profits, and that's absolutely true. But nobody's doing that today. So how do you turn this around? I don't know, but it needs to be turned around because the effects, the social and political effects, are destroying us.
Really heavy. Brendan, I asked for 90 minutes. We went a little over. Can you go a few more minutes?
Sure.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
Yeah, because no, this is amazing what you said. Because the first one was, is my philosophy about life correct? That was two things that reminded me of. The guy goes to his guru and he says, what's the best question I can ask you? And the guru goes, the one you just asked me.
Very good.
And then John Cage, who McLuhan said, hey, dude, you got to do something on Finnegan's Wake. And he did. Him and Merce Cunningham did stuff on Finnegan's Wake because of McLuhan's He said, Cage, he says, what's question remains unresolved for you? Cage would go, that's a very good question. I wouldn't want to ruin it with an answer.
That's very Cage.
That is so good. So there's this Bell Labs. Bringing up Bell Labs. I interviewed somebody a week or two ago, and they said when IBM and Bell Labs were first writing code, when code writing was first coming about, they went to musicians. And the codes were way better. Now they don't go to musicians to write codes. They go to coders and codes suck. Is that kind of a fair generalization or not?
No, not really. No. I mean, all the early people at Bell Labs and at the Watson Labs at IBM, they were all computer scientists, mathematicians, physicists. I mean, yes, they might have actually played violin on the side, but that's not why they got hired.
Right. They weren't, because I know they went to experimental filmmakers like Stan Vanderbeek, but he was saying they actually did seek out people who weren't computer scientists. And I thought that was interesting because the kid who invented Snapchat was consulting with fashion people and music people and architecture people and not just computer scientists. So he got this bigger picture. But I thought it was the mind of a musician being kind of like, back to that monk, mathematically minded, might have knew how to have more fun writing code or be more successful.
But the thing is, there's kind of a popular picture of what makes a computer scientist, and I'm not going to speak to today, but I will speak to the 50s, 60s, 70s. The people who are the PhDs that were in these places, they were extremely well educated, and they weren't narrowly educated. Many of them had wide interests. My wife's cousin, PhD in biophysics, wonderful painter, and she painted a whole life, but yet she was a biophysicist. God, I'm trying to think of his name. Wonderful engineer, mechanical engineer with a very strong physics background, who did huge amount of vibration analysis that helped make modern planes possible. Could have actually had a career as a concert violinist. I mean, he was that good, and he loved it. So I think that at a given time that people were more widely educated, perhaps, than they are today.
And now, like, I'm in a computer science, so you just learn code writing, and you're not as expensive. Yeah. Utah Phillips said anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people. Who's entitled to make the rules?
Oh, that's a very tough one. This is a place where compromise is required.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think any one person can, as much as there's the wonderful fantasy of the benevolent dictator who comes along and fixes everything. It never works that way. Yeah. And I think you've got to have a collective collaboration. And so long as that collective collaboration is agrees on certain basic principles, you can wind up with a very good result and not the Nazi Party.
Yeah. What's the difference between rights and responsibilities?
Oh, two sides of the same coin. I mean, they just go together. If you have a right, you've got a responsibility as well.
Yeah.
They're not separate.
Yeah. Thornton Wilder, who was a total Wakean, by the way, said, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for over 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you?
This is going to sound so nerdy, but in fact, really what I care about is learning and experiencing new things every day
Yeah.
in given very focused areas, and sharing them with a handful of people that I love. And that's really, the rest of the stuff for me, it just doesn't really matter much.
Yeah. Really articulated my philosophy too. Learn new stuff, focus, and share it. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
How has management consultant for these many years you've done it shaped your behavior?
Well, I don't talk to any of my former colleagues. I only talk to people in the arts and sciences now, so that's much, much better, honestly. No, that's not true. I've got one former colleague who was he was an honors graduate from MIT, and we've stayed good friends.
Yeah.
But actually, he was an engineer, so hey. No, I do think I think about things. One of the ways I spend my time is every day I try and spend X amount of time really actually studying social sciences. And I never had the time to do this when I was working. And so I'm using the textbooks they use at Cambridge and Oxford and London School of Economics by and large. And I'm slowly working through them and learning things and getting ideas. And I'm curious as to what can be learned that's applicable to social ills and to social benefit. And so I guess now what I do in terms of what I used to do was very focused on a given problem or a given client or a given industry. Now I'm much more focused, using the very same thinking tools, but with more information, on looking at social issues and trying to figure out which end is north.
Yeah. It's really good. I do suggest check out Take Today, The Executive is Dropout, 1972 book by Marshall McLuhan.
McLuhan, aces by me.
Definitely nails utilizing the wake. And what a title, The Executive is Dropout in 72. I mean, it's kind of same thing as the wake gibberish. But it's good gibberish.
No, he was a very thoughtful person. He was very thoughtful. And if you like with Joyce, if you give him time, if you don't look for instant gratification, if you give him time, that time is rewarded.
Yes, indeed. What gives you the most optimism?
Individuals.
Yeah.
You run across individuals who just make you smile.
Yeah.
And make you feel like, I know things are looking bleak and there's lots wrong. And you meet individuals and you go, you know what? But as long as it's people like this, there might be a better tomorrow.
Amazing, Brendan. The first question is, what is the best thing for a human being? Wilhelm Reich said, the best thing for a human being is another human being. The last question, what gives you the most optimism, I got is from what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. And he said, other people. So saying individuals is amazing because it's sure been an amazing time to spend this time now with another human being, an individual. especially as one as smart as you. You know, McLuhan really nailed it in this regard to what we just went through here. Thank you for sharing your time in words. He said, communication of the new is a miracle, but it's not impossible. And
very good.
yeah, well, but and you got a great laugh. I'll give you the bonus joke. The priest is crossing the Canadian border, and the custom officer says, what's in that, Father? What's in that flask? And he goes, it's water. And the custom officer says, give me that. And he takes a swig and he goes, that's whiskey. And the priest goes, it's a miracle.
Very good indeed.
Brendan, what a pleasure. Thank you for your time. It's really been a delight. Thank you.
Same. Thank you so much for your invitation, for having me. This has really been a very, very fun, very informative use of time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever.
We can. Ciao.
We can.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.